Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Fires upfield into the end zone. It is caught. Jelani Woods, touchdown! INDY!
Yes.
43-point night for Tyrese Halliburton.
How do you like that, partner?
Galloway drives all the way to the hole, throws it up, got it! Indiana's got their first lead of this contest.
Pretty simple. I win. Google me.
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hey, everybody. How are you today? It is Wednesday, January 10th. Thanks a lot for being with us. Of course, Indiana Sports Beat Radio coming to you from parts unknown. Just kidding. Brought to you by our good friends, powered by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Get more to your door with AndyMooreHonda.com, and the best in new and used vehicles around. Boy, on the program today, Dylan Sinn will join us. Cal Neddenriep from the Indy Star, Rick Bozich, the Hall of Famer. Lots to talk about. Some good games last night. Not for most of you listening, though. That's for sure. Numbers 1 and 2 go down. Of course, we'll talk about that. Aaron Rodgers is a whack job. Plenty of that to get to. We have a way too early college football top 25 and some info there. And we will hear from Indiana coach Mike Woodson after last night's debacle in Piscataway. I wish I'd have thought about that a little sooner. Come up with a better name than that. The Piscataway something. I can't think of a good word that fits in there, but I appreciate all of you being with us. Of course, as always, thank you so very much. Shout out to everybody hitting us up on the Andy Moore Honda hotline early and often. Fred, as always, jumping on. Kent from Mount Pleasant, Michigan. John over in Brown County. Gritty down southern Indiana. Bob in Georgetown, my old haunt. Howie, thank you, sir. Post-game show last night, yeah, it was something. A little different than your normal post-game. Todd couldn't be with us, so and this was before the game. So I had it set up for Joe Hillman, who is always kind to join us, and Brian Hillman. Joe Hillman and Brian Evans, getting my names crossed over. Had them both on, both known for just speaking their mind. And Todd got lucky. He got to bow out and not participate in that one last night. And I'll be honest with you, it was one where I was just trying to stay out of the way between those two guys. I couldn't see Brian, so it was hard to know when he was going to speak or not. But give that a listen if you want to hear some raw emotion of former players who will speak their mind and tell you what they think. Most of the time you get team speak because, and whether you're in my position, their position, I pretty much always say what I think. I've learned to try to meter that a little bit to not just jump off the plank, but sometimes you just have to speak the truth, which is what I always do. But I mean, rawly, without trying to dress it up. But Indiana basketball last night just put on a show of ineptitude as they lose at Rutgers, a team that was without a Big Ten win. Meanwhile, Nebraska, the former laughingstock of the Big Ten, not so much anymore as they knock off number 1 Purdue. You know, they got close last year to beating Purdue. Very close to beating them last year. I knew this game was going to be Much trickier than people thought, because this is the best Nebraska team that Fred Hoiberg has had. Something very cool I learned last night with Brian Evans on the postgame show. Toby Naka, who is basically the leader for this Nebraska team, he led them last night with 19 points as they knock off number 1 Purdue 88-72 in Lincoln. Brian played with Toby Naka's dad after he had gotten out of the NBA but was still playing professionally. And he said he just realized that the other day. So pretty cool story there. Very cool story, as a matter of fact. Just to see, and Nebraska is the perfect team to look at. If you looked at that team, would you see a team that was capable of beating the number 1 team in the country by 16 points? Most people are going to say no. But let me tell you, you can't judge a book by its cover. And I think there's a lot of covers on Indiana's roster, if that makes sense to you. Bob asking, how do you put a finger on what's wrong with the Indiana team? 1 minute they're one way, the next minute they're the other. Well, that's an easy answer. It may not be, easy may not be the right word, and I'll get to that. I did not think that we would hear the word the hump again, but later on we'll hear from Mike Woodson, and my God, there it was about 6 minutes in. I'm like, please don't say that. And there it was. The hump returned. Indiana's like a camel. But mountain size. Fred asking, will there be consequences for Xavier Johnson? What is the culture, values of IU basketball right now? I'm not sure that they have any. There's a lot of things they don't have, and I'll get to that as well. John, how are you, sir? Las Vegas Larry says, how frustrating last night's game was. He's checking in from Las Vegas. And Doug, how are you, sir? Russell, appreciate you. Thank you very much. Says he appreciates the post-game show last night. I appreciate each and every one of you guys. And again, special thanks to Joe Hillman and Brian Evans for joining us. The ran away from Piscataway. That's better than what I said, but it's not quite there. Michael says, Brian Evans' comments about the program were scary and sad. Be a little more specific, because I'll be honest with you, when you're on with someone for over an hour, I can't remember everything that was said, because half the time I'm focusing on the comments and trying to. Last night was a juggling act, to be honest with you. I tried it normally with Todd. I know what I'm going to talk about, ask direct, because there's not a lot that you have to do. Todd, all these guys are so freaking basketball savvy. They have so much. You want to talk about basketball IQ? There's not a player that comes from that era that does not have great basketball IQ. And that's why I love doing the shows with those guys. They see things that the rest of us don't. They see it in a way that we don't. They understand it. They can explain it. And it's not always going to be what fans want to hear. Philip said the refs took it away from Nebraska last year. Very possible. Russell said they did not hold back last night. Hillman and Evans enjoyed their takes. They raised a lot of questions for Russell. Well, but none of these questions were not already on the table for me. I'll be honest with you. My job is to be a journalist, to ask questions, to raise things up that people don't want to hear, to say the things that people don't want to say. And I'm not alone, but I catch a lot of flack for that. You would be amazed if you saw all my comments. It'll be 80%, 90% one way, but then you've got this 10%. And I'm like, what the hell are you watching? What are you looking at? But, wow, what an ugly game that was last night. Eric, how are you doing, sir? Thank you for joining us. He says, go to the Lady Hoosiers. They play tonight. Good luck to them. 5 Left's on as well. Substitutions. We'll talk about that. He doesn't like that. Dr. Drew says that maybe the worst IU performance in 10 years, and that says a lot. Yeah, you know why that says a lot? Because that covers over Archie Miller. I did not think that reaching those depths again were possible. But last night was Archie Miller all over again. You see a basketball team that has no discipline, no chemistry, no identity. Not a good one, that is. But most importantly, no six letters is this next sentence. Capitalized N-O, capitalized BB, capitalized IQ, exclamation point. No basketball IQ. This team has little to none of that. And I'm talking some basic stuff. And it's not getting better. It's getting worse. Never a good sign. Was it 29% from the free throw line? What, are you kidding me? That's not even possible. Not possible. I know that I say some things that you guys think are outlandish. People think I promise you, I don't care what the conditions are. Right now, I could shoot 65 to 70% right now. Joe Hillman said that was funny comment, said Brian Evans could drop kick free throws in better than what Indiana shoots them. And I agree with that. Where does Indiana go? My question last night, we already ready for a break, John? Damn.
You can finish your thought. You can still finish.
I get revved up, man. It's I agree with Kevin. I think Indiana's going backwards. The substitution stuff we're going to talk about. Xavier Johnson's Jekyll and Hyde routine has run its course with IU fans for some already a long time ago. Yeah, Michael, Brian continued to call Indiana a top 100 program, which is accurate. And also said the inner circle of the IU alumni are quiet. We'll get into more of that as well. Appreciate you, Doug. But we're going to take a quick break. Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette is going to join us next. We'll talk about Indiana's loss, Nebraska's gigantic win. Houston also loses last night to Iowa State. Both numbers 1 and 2 go down to unranked teams, but neither of those teams are bad. And I promise you, neither will be unranked next week. We've got lots more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Appreciate you being with us. Back right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market.
Morning,
Well,
Dylan.
good day,
Welcome
Dylan
in.
Sinn.
Well, good morning.
I know you weren't in Lincoln last night, so were you in Bloomington?
No. IU was on the road
never
too.
Mind the game. Yes,
Yeah.
never mind. My mind is going 1,000 miles an hour. I was wondering why I had the stupidest look from you right then. I'm like, what? Am I speaking German?
No, I was trying to figure out what was going on.
I know. I got it. Trust me. I was like, wait a minute, jackass. They played in Piscataway. You've already said it 5 times. Yeah, let's see. I had Brian Evans and Joe Hillman on the postgame show last night. Todd couldn't do the show last night. He had a prior commitment, and so I got not only one, but probably the 2 most outspoken ex-players that will even that talk to people.
Sure.
Joe comes on the show a lot. Especially whenever needed, and Brian's been on several times as well. And Joe does not hold back. Period. He don't care. I mean, what they got? It's like I said, Brian was trying to ride the line a little bit, but there's a point to where, well, at least with me, I'm like, what do you want me to do? Sit here and lie to you? I mean, I'm not going to lie, and we all saw what we saw. We see what we see. It's there, and if you don't see it, maybe you don't want to see it. But the worst performance ever. I don't think I'd go that far, but
You have to remember they lost to Indiana State with Archie Miller in the opener.
no, they lost Indiana State and Dylan's.
Yeah, Purdue.
Mastodons.
Oh yeah, Fort Wayne. Was that? I thought Tom Crean lost to Fort Wayne.
No, they both did. No, they both did. Tom Crean lost to him in Fort Wayne, and Archie lost to him in Bloomington.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, I will never forget that game.
Yeah.
I can't remember who it was, but there was like something that stood out. The left guard closest to me, so whoever was guarding him was 5 feet away from him and like spinning circles like this, just like, what do I do? What do I do? Meanwhile, they're just chucking up 3-point shots.
Yeah. It didn't help that they had a guy who ended up playing in the NBA and no one knew how good he was when he first got he ended up at PFW. He was a star the minute he walked on campus, and now he's in the NBA, and IU had to face him in like the 6th game of his career, and it was like, wait, who the heck is this guy?
All right, here we go, guys. This segment is brought to you by the Chop Shop, home of the Indiana football and men's basketball coaches shows. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Goose Fraba. Goose Fraba. Great reference. John, I know you don't know what that one is.
That is correct. No clue.
I will bet Dylan does not know that one either.
Nope.
Goose Fraba. Goose Fraba. What's the name of the movie, Philip? Oh, daggone it. When you have to go through those classes for getting mad all the time.
Anger management.
Anger management. That's the name of the movie. Thank you very much.
Is that the one with Jack Nicholson and Adam Sandler?
It is.
Yeah.
Goose Fraba.
I haven't seen that one in years.
Goose Fraba. Yes, that's Philip. You could not have put up anything more perfect today. That is A+, brother. A+ on the Andy Moore Honda hotline. This is also accurate. Braden Smith.
Yeah, that was okay.
Braden. That's why I threw me off. Like Braden Smith.
It was an Archie Miller thing, not a Mike Woodson thing. But
didn't not quite. Woodson had the opportunity to recruit him and would not recruit him.
Okay, but he got Jalen Hood-Schifino as the point guard in that class, though. I'm not going to blame Mike Woodson for that.
But he's guard poor.
But he's guard poor because
he was.
their guard.
But he had
four,
Jalen in,
Hood-
but Jalen was not thought to be. He was not expected to leave after the first year.
That's what I'm saying. Like
that.
Jalen Hood Schifino turned out to be too good. That was the problem. It's the same reason Purdue last year was like, wow. Purdue last year is kind of the same thing where they had two guards playing in the tournament that were freshmen because Jaden Ivey turned out to be too good. It was like, why do they not have any guards? Well, Jaden Ivey was a lottery pick the year before. They didn't expect that to happen. If he was 90% as good and stayed around for another year, they'd probably make the Final Four, maybe win a national title. So, yeah, it happens. It also doesn't help that Ja'Kai Newton is hurt. It also doesn't help that Xavier Johnson's been hurt half the year and then got ejected last year in a pretty ridiculous call, in my opinion. But
now, you think it's a ridiculous call or a ridiculous play?
I mean, I don't think that's a flagrant 2. Come on,
dude. Joe Hillman explained it best, and I would never have said this the way he did, but he did, so it's out there. He's like, he sticks his hand up a guy's shorts and grabs his package. I mean, you can see when you're going by somebody and your arm is up somebody's shorts and he's already still behind you. Come on, man.
Yeah, I mean,
your hand does not find your way up.
John Stockton did that play every day for 20 years and never got even a foul call. Like, that happens in basketball. Like
in the NBA.
Yeah, exactly. Like, come on.
But is that something you need your senior leader, your senior guard, your only true point guard right now? I mean, Gabe is there, but he's not one that provides offensive. Anyway, that's not a time or a place. You're on the road. It's there's so many things that I could add to that, but your job is to be the leader. And not only is he doing that nonsense, he's doing the other things like the end of the half. All that ridiculousness where he holds the ball for 20 seconds and then loses it for his fifth and final turnover of the game, I believe.
He had a bad game. There's no way around that. And it was tough because he played so well against Ohio State on Saturday. And it was like, okay, maybe he's turned a corner here. But yeah, like he's clearly still working through being rusty from being out for a month.
I'm not here to bang on Indiana. I've tried to not do that as much as possible, but there comes a point to where you're like, dude, like I said, what do you want me to do? Lie? Indiana is 2.5 years into Mike Woodson, and it is regressing. And
I mean, it was always going to regress this year. Like, that's the thing. People like,
everybody says that, and I disagree. You should not be regressing in the era of the transfer portal of NIL.
That's just how it works. Like, you lost one of the best players in program history and a first round pick. You were always going to be worse this year than you were last year, right? Like the fact that they were not going to be as good as they were last year was not really a secret, despite the fact they went out and did very well in the transfer portal overall. Like,
not well enough. That's the problem.
Yeah, I wish they'd gotten another guard. I don't think there's any way around that. I think that they should have. I think they needed one. But I also think that they thought they were going to get a lot more from Mackenzie Mbako defensively than they have. He struggles so much on that end of the floor that the fact that he's come a long way as a scorer is overshadowed by the fact that he's struggling on that end. I think they thought they were going to get a lot more from him. Again, I think they thought they were going to get a lot from Ja'Kai Newton this year, who, as far as I can tell, is a good player who is not getting an opportunity to show it. I think they thought that they were going to get more defensively from Gabe Cupps, who is not bad on that end of the floor, but it's not game changing in the way I think they thought he was. And so they went and got Khalil Ware because they needed a big man. I think it was probably tough in the transfer portal to say, hey, we need a guard and not be able to promise any playing time, because that's why people go in the portal is to get playing time. They couldn't promise anyone playing time because you already have.
How could you not? You have to be able to promise people playing time because you're going to need them, because Mike Woodson says, I can't play these guys 40 minutes a game.
Well, they couldn't promise them a starting spot. right?
There you go.
They,
Now
they had
well,
Xavier
you should never. I don't think you should ever promise anybody a starting spot. I'm like,
Right.
I think you have to earn that, and I
mean,
think that if you're a competitor, you have to know that going into whatever you're.
But that's
doing.
that's how the transfer portal works, though. Is a lot of these guys are looking for a starting spot, right? Like that's Khalil. I don't think. Let's put it this way: Indiana probably didn't promise Khalil Ware a starting spot, but they probably told him, "Hey, we don't have another center." Like, hey, you're gonna play, I guarantee it. So like that's the thing, they couldn't do that with the guards they were looking at in the transfer portal. And like, yeah, I was pounding the table in the offseason. Go get Brandon Newman from Purdue. He's in the portal. He's exactly what IU's missing right now. Like he ended up at Western Kentucky. They probably could have used him, right? But and there were other guys in the portal they could have gone and gotten. They didn't. They didn't do it, and that is a bad decision, or they not getting it done, whatever you want to call it. But other than that, I do think that they played this offseason about as well as they could have. Getting Khalil Ware, getting Mackenzie Mbako, like you didn't think coming into the season you were going to get as little from Mbako as you have. And I'm not knocking Mbako, to be clear. I think that he will be a good player eventually. I don't think that it will be this year, and I don't think it will be with Indiana because I don't think he's going to stay at Indiana for more than a year. But
I don't either, and I don't think that it's because he's in the NBA next year. I
don't think so.
Mbako in Bloomington next year? Question mark.
No. I doubt it. And that's the kind of the flip side of you can't say that Indiana is young because they're not going to have these guys next season. It's not like this team is going to be able to grow together. Like if Khalil Ware and Mackenzie Mbako came back next year and you add Liam McNeely to this team, then you're kind of cooking. But I don't think that either of those guys is going to be back next year. So you're starting over again is the problem. And so I understand.
Not only are you starting over, Derek Queen, if this continues, I think that I know that Khalil Ware will be gone next year. Well, I think he'll be gone next year personally, yeah, but I don't think that matters. If Indiana continues to head in the direction that they're going, which is straight downhill.
See, I don't think that's entirely true. I think people are overreacting to last night's game because they're going to overreact to last night's game. Like, I don't think
that's Indiana, just a cap. I think it's just a cap on the jar.
I don't think so. I think they're going to be fine-ish. Maybe they missed the tournament. I think they win 10, 11 Big Ten games and they're fine. Like they played very well against Ohio State on Saturday. They're going to have a chance to win a game against Minnesota on Sunday or on Friday, I should say. And then they're going to host Purdue, and they'll probably stand on their head in that game like they have the last two times Purdue has come to Bloomington. Like I don't think this season is lost because of what happened last night. I do think that they have a chance to win that game at the end last night if Xavier Johnson is still in the game at the end, which is, yeah, that's cold comfort. He wasn't in the game at the end and they lost. But I think they were the better team while he was in the game, despite how badly he played, which is kind of funny. They were the better team for most of that game until he left. And yeah, they didn't do enough and they missed a lot of threes. They missed a lot of free throws, but they were getting the better shots. They were moving the ball better. They were playing decent defense for most of that game until he left. And I don't think that team, like, maybe this is me trying to put a positive spin on it. I don't think that game.
And I appreciate that because we need somebody to do that because it's not going to be me today.
No, I don't think the sky is falling in the same way you do. I understand people think they're going to go 7-13 in Big Ten play. I don't think that's going to happen. They are obviously still working through a lot. They're not where I think a lot of people thought they would be at this time of the year, but I don't think the sky is falling. I guess here's one thing I will say in terms of if you want to take a silver lining from last night, Khalil Ware was awesome. You guys watched Khalil Ware last night? If you're looking for, like, if Derek Queen is watching, like, the one positive from last night was how well Khalil Ware played. He dominated in the paint. He had 17 rebounds.
13 and 17. Yeah, great night for him.
Fantastic. Like, if you're talking about, like, oh, he doesn't, like, we've talked about it before this year. The whole thing about him and the motor, that's over. Like, he played incredibly hard the entire time he was in that game. And basically, IU's rebounding issues from the Ohio State game went away in large part because he was out there on the defensive glass. Now, they still didn't rebound well enough. I think Malik Renew needs to be better in that area. I don't think he boxes out well enough. But Khalil Ware was very, very good last night. And I do think that if Xavier Johnson is in that game at the end, despite how poorly Xavier Johnson played for parts of that game, if he is on the court for the last 13 minutes of that game, I am not convinced IU loses that game. I think the problem with him getting ejected, and I know that this is like, well, he shouldn't have gotten ejected then, but I do think that if he is on the floor in that game, Rutgers they can't go to the full court press that they did. And the full court press is what cost Indiana the game because they weren't able to get the ball across half court. They weren't able to take care of it. And Xavier Johnson is the guy he's your primary ball handler. He's your best on-ball defender. And not having both of those things for the final 13 minutes of that game, like it was 39-35 when he left, and then they were -9 over the next 7 minutes as they tried to kind of desperately figure things out. And then they figured things out, and it was too late.
But that's the problem. They are so one-dimensional. They don't have a second. There's no plan B.
No,
that's the problem.
They don't have
plan A, and if plan A doesn't go well,
yeah,
it's bad.
They don't have it. They don't have enough ball handlers, and you're exactly right. They don't have enough ball handlers. Trey Galloway and Anthony Leal and CJ Gunn cannot be your primary ball handlers. They're just not equipped to do it at this time. I also think the other part of it is, and this is where I think Mike Woodson was talking about they need more leadership from the seniors, is that there was a timeout last night where IU was down 11 or whatever it was, and Stephen Bardo, who was calling the game for Peacock, who was basically saying, hey, Trey Galloway's a senior. He needs to get his guys together and kind of settle everyone down. And the problem is that Trey Galloway is not that guy. He's just not. Xavier Johnson is that guy. Like you took out IU's emotional heart too, because he wasn't on the bench anymore either. He wasn't able to get these guys together and say, hey, let's figure this out. Trey Galloway is not the kind of like emotional, hey, everyone settle down, let's get this. And I think they need him to be, but he just never has kind of grabbed that role with both hands. And so they don't really have, with Xavier Johnson in the locker room, they don't have that guy. And that's why it was so tough that he got ejected, because you took away their primary ball handler, their best on-ball defender, and the guy who kind of settles everything down when things are going crazy. And that was the game. It was like as soon as he was ejected, the game was over. And it was just kind of, well, how ugly is this going to get down the stretch? And it got pretty ugly.
We've got to take a quick break. Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette is with us, and we've got lots more coming up, more on Indiana and Purdue, and lots more to get to as well. Stay with us. We're back with more right after this break.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
If you're looking for... Yeah, Joe Hillman was not happy. You could tell he was legitimately pissed off.
I mean, there's no reason to be happy, I don't think. I also don't think
I mean, and those guys are usually pretty, even keeled, but they have like I say, they see things that I don't see. They see things in a way that I can't see because of where they've been, where they've come from, what they've been taught, how they learned, all the years of going through that stuff. And it just gives a little validation to what I'm thinking, because I'm like, okay, I know what I'm seeing, but I know that I don't have all that ability all the time, and I don't pretend to, where most people think that they do and go right on with it. I know that I didn't play for Bob Knight. I didn't spend 5 years of that's like having 5 years of a doctorate class. That's not getting a bachelor's, then a master's, then a doctorate. That's like having doctorate classes for 5 years or 4 years, however long you're there.
Sure.
And gosh,
here's what I will say in terms of like, oh, it's year 3 and they're regressing. I looked this up the other day. Cards on the table. I think Dan Hurley is the best coach in the country. Not just because they won the national title last year, but just because his teams play in such a way that like he has those guys ready to go every single night.
They play like him. They kind of play like his personality.
Yeah. I think he's the best coach in the country. He did not win an NCAA tournament game for 4 years at UConn. 4 years in, they had won 0 NCAA tournament games. And then they won a national championship in year 5.
It's not about that, though. It's how were they playing in that period, though? Were they growing? Were they getting better? Were they trending upward? Did they have basketball IQ? Did they have an identity? They may have been started off, but did they? And they had to have to get to the point that they got to. That had to be an upward rise trajectory.
Yeah, I mean, in year 3 they went 50. It was the COVID year. They went 15-8, and were like a 9 seed. And it was like, okay, fine. Like, I don't know. Progress is never linear. We know this. Like, he had proof of concept last year.
See, I disagree with that. I think last year was average. They made the tournament. They made the tournament.
They were a number 4 seed while missing their all Big Ten point guard for half the year.
Yep, here we go.
Come and get more to your door.
This segment is brought to you by RE/MAX Advanced Realty, Indie Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the golf club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, welcome back. Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Wednesday. It's January 10th. Thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate you. Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette with me right now. Continuing to talk about last night's game. And for me, it is just a continuation of what we have been seeing this season. And I don't know that it gets better. I don't know how Indiana has. Where are they going to go on the road in the Big Ten and win? If you can't beat what was the worst team and possibly the worst team in the league, what are you going to do? Where are you going to go? Their next 3 games after playing Minnesota at home are against Wisconsin, Purdue, and Illinois, the 3 best teams in the conference, and all 3 top 25 teams without question. To me, it just does not look good.
They already went on the road and won a game in Big Ten play. If you'll remember,
against Michigan.
Against Michigan. So yeah, they're not immune to winning games on the road. I think that if you played that game against Rutgers 10 times, I think Indiana probably wins 5 of them. They are not going to go 7-3 on the road in Big Ten play. I don't think that was ever going to happen. But if you go 9-1 at home and 4-6 on the road, you're going to the NCAA tournament. So I think that that's not outside the realm of possibility. I don't think it's likely. I don't think they're likely to make the tournament this year, but I don't think it's impossible either. And I do think there are winnable games on the road. I think the problem with what happened last night, and part of it, maybe this can transition us into talking about the other game that happened last night, is what happened last night came so close on the heels of getting kind of run off the court at Nebraska. And it's like, oh, it's Nebraska and Rutgers. We lost to both of them. Well, Nebraska's a doggone good team. I think that was kind of lost in that whole thing. And I told people before the game against Nebraska, and I told them at the end, it's going to hurt more because it's Nebraska and it's usually a free win. It is not a free win this season. Nebraska
almost beat Purdue last year.
Yes. And last night's game against Rutgers feels worse because it comes on the heels of losing like they did to Nebraska. And the combination of those, I can see why people are upset about that. But it's also, Nebraska is one of the best teams in the Big Ten this year. Going on the road and losing to them is you're not like embarrassed by that. Obviously, they're a good team, and they shot Indiana out of the building just like they shot Purdue out of the building. And yeah, it stinks that IU wasn't able to go get a huge win on the road. I don't like. I guess my message to everyone that is the sky is not falling in the way that a lot of people seem to think it is just because of last night's game. I do understand the frustration. I do think that IU needed to get another guard in the portal. I do get that. I do think that this team will probably be fine eventually. Probably too late to make the tournament, which stinks. I know you want to make the tournament. I get it. But I don't think that this is like the dire dogs and cats living together situation that it's being made out to be. Everyone take a breath. I know it's Rutgers. I know it stings to lose to Rutgers. I know that Rutgers talks a lot about how they own IU, and so it stings to lose to them, whatever. IU knocked them out of the tournament last year in Bloomington. Don't forget that. Paul Mulcahy basically did exactly what Xavier Johnson did last night. Don't forget that. So yeah, it stinks. It's bad. Everyone take a breath. It's going to be fine.
Jalen Hood-Schifino is, to me, the exception, not the rule. I think that his improvement was because he's a great athlete, a great basketball player. He was going to be in the position he found himself in. He just got there sooner because Xavier Johnson got hurt last year and he was forced into play and was able to get all of this playing time, exposure, and he showed he could handle it, and not only handle it, but he could excel. Boom. So there's that. But who do you think that there has been development on? Really, Trace Jackson Davis is not. Mike Woodson does not get credit for Trace Jackson Davis.
Mike Woodson, no. Mike Woodson deserves credit for Trace. Trace Jackson Davis says that Mike Woodson deserves credit.
Well, of course he says that. They all say that. They said great things about Archie till he left, and then they said everything bad about him. They tell the truth. They have to say that, man. They have to say that stuff.
They don't have, Mike Woodson is not Trace Jackson Davis's coach anymore. If he thought he was a bad coach or didn't help him, he wouldn't be going around the NBA saying Mike Woodson got me ready for the NBA. Like that's not how that works. Come on, Trace Jackson. Okay.
Why is no one else developing? Tamar Bates is really flourishing at Missouri.
Oh, okay. I mean, he's averaging 10 points a game. Like he could have averaged 10 points a game on this IU team too. I don't think Tamar Bates has suddenly exploded into a better player than he was before. I
think that he's found a system that actually is a system. I don't think Indiana has anything offensively that's a system. Last year, it was just feed the ball to Trace Jackson Davis, and let's hope that works out. And if not, who knows?
If you have an elite big man, you feed the ball to the elite big man. That's exactly what Purdue does, and everyone loves Purdue's system. But
they have more. But Purdue is more than Zach Edey, and Zach Edey is different than.
No, anyway. I know, but the idea is if you have an elite big man in college basketball, you feed the ball to him as much as you can, and then you iterate off of that. You spread the floor, and put shooters around him and play that way. And that's what IU did against Ohio State on Saturday. That's how they won the game. Is they fed the ball to Malik Renew and let him make plays, not only scoring, but you kind of spread the floor around him, right? I don't think that the whole IU runs it fails to run a modern offense under Mike Woodson. I don't know how fair that is. I mean, when they played Purdue last season, both times I thought Mike Woodson out-schemed Matt Painter. I don't think there's really any way around that because Purdue was the better team and IU won both games.
I don't know how you can say you out-schemed him in West Lafayette when all that was Jalen Hood-Schifino just going off for 35 points by hitting 14-foot jump shots all over Purdue's face all night long. They kept giving it to him and he kept hitting them.
Purdue had no adjustment.
But that's not a scheme. That's just that's your point guard with the ball in his hand. Just doing it on his own.
They ran like 7 different actions to get him free for those shots though. That wasn't just
I think he got himself free for most of them.
Well, yeah. I mean, it wasn't just spread the court. Hey, Jalen, go do it for us. Jalen Hood-Schifino is a great player. He made plays. You have to have the players to do it. But it wasn't just hey, roll the ball out there. Jalen, figure it out for us. I do think that this team is held back by its lack of playmaking ability at guard. And that's what's frustrating is that Trey Galloway has shown an ability to do it, but there's no consistency. right? Like what he did against Kansas should be something that he does on three out of every 4 nights. You know, I'm not saying he needs to score 28 points a game. I'm saying that he needs to give them that playmaking ability. Like against Kansas, they destroyed Kansas by running Trey Galloway off of those like curl screens and getting him in the lane and then giving him an opportunity to have an 8-foot floater or a lob to Khalil Ware. Where has that been over the last like several games here? Because they that was what they needed to do last night against Rutgers when Xavier Johnson got out, and they didn't run that at all. And maybe other teams have it scouted now. I don't know. But they needed to get Trey Galloway downhill, and they didn't do it. I do think that so many of the problems that IU has right now are kind of the fruit of Xavier Johnson's injury last year, right? If Xavier Johnson doesn't get hurt, IU probably makes a deeper run in the NCAA tournament and then hands the keys to Jalen Hood-Schifino this year, and this team is pretty dang good too. And it's so much of what's happening this year is the fruit of Xavier Johnson getting hurt last year, and it stinks. And sometimes that's what happens is the program takes a step back because of a bad injury. It stinks, but that's what happens. And yeah, again, I wish they would have gotten another guy in the portal this year at guard. I think there were guys out there to go get, and they didn't get one. That is a mistake, and it shouldn't have happened. But I also think that they thought they could probably ride with the guys they had this year, and it just hasn't happened again because Xavier Johnson got hurt. Now, maybe you shouldn't have trusted Xavier Johnson to not get hurt because he got hurt last year, but he did. And so I think that and the other part of this, to go back to what you were saying earlier, I don't think it's fair to say that none of these guys have developed. I think that Jalen Hood-Schifino got significantly better his year at IU, and I'm not saying I'm not saying
because of Mike Johnson. It was Mike Woodson. It was because of Xavier Johnson getting hurt. If that doesn't happen, then he doesn't have that breakout year last year.
Right. But
I think it's just because he got the playing time, not because he was developed in practice. Because there's no way when you have a team that's shooting freaking 50% as a team on the year from the free throw line. Good God Almighty!
I mean, that's not
team aside and saying, "Whoa, guys."
Yeah.
This is a problem.
I don't think like the free throws are what they are. They're bad. It stinks. The Trey Galloway. I said this last night. Teams should start hack-a-shacking Trey Galloway. His free throw form.
That's amazing.
Is so messed. Like I don't know what happened. Like to the like that's not player like Trey Galloway going from a 75% free throw shooter to a 50% free throw shooter in an offseason. That's nothing to do with player development. That is something happened to him mentally that he has lost whatever he was doing at the line. It's going to take basically an offseason to get it back. I think like it is bad, and that's part of the reason I'm not as worried about. That's part of the reason I'm not as worried about the team after last night's game is because they went 4 for 15 at the line and lost by single digits. Like
the worst team. That's because you're playing the worst team in the league.
I know. But you went 4 for 15 at the foul line. They should have lost that game by 25 points. The fact that they were even in it at all is like Mike Wisdom was not wrong about that. It was shocking they were in the game at all, considering how many free throws they missed. And I don't consider free throws a part of player development. I'm sorry, I just don't. Like that is one thing that is not on the coaches.
I agree with you.
That is not on the coaches at all. That players got to make free throws. There is nothing the coaches can like. You can give them all the tips in the world about kind of here's how you breathe while you shoot your free throw, and here's how you follow through, and here's how you align your weight and all of that. None of it is going to help until the players kind of get over that mental hurdle. And there is not a whole lot the coaches can be doing with that. Maybe
you can sit here and talk about this game all damn day long, and I don't want to ignore last night's the last thing I will say about this is earlier I said this team seems to have no discipline, no chemistry, no identity that's good, and no basketball IQ. But worst of all, I think a lot of that comes from because there is no accountability. None. We've seen no accountability. There is no repercussions for bad play, no repercussions for doing things that is detrimental to winning the game. There's no bench. You don't get benched. Everybody starts. It doesn't matter if you get in trouble. You don't miss time. You can do whatever you want. There is no discipline on that team. And it shows when games are tight and tough. It doesn't matter the level of competition. They don't have the discipline to do the things that they need to do to win those kind of close, tough games where you can just simply be out-scrapped.
Yeah, I will say, like, and I understand what you're saying. I think that they didn't play well last night, obviously, but they've won a lot of close games.
Not just about last night, though.
Yeah, but they've won a lot of close games this year, though. Like they won,
yes, but they were against Morehead State and all these other low-level teams that shouldn't have been close games. You should not barely beat Florida Gulf Coast State.
I know.
Shouldn't.
I know, but like I mean, again, they did go on the road and beat Michigan in a close game, and I know Michigan is struggling, but they went on the road and won that game. They just beat Ohio State at home in a close game. It was tight until the very end, and they ran away with it at the end. Like basically, the game against Ohio State is what they've done the entire year, which is with 5 to 6 minutes left, they decide, oh yeah, we have to play now. And then they go out and win. And yeah, it didn't happen last night, and that stinks. But like they've been doing that the entire year. As the game is close, it's close. Oh, it's not IU won. And yeah, they weren't able to do it against Auburn or UConn, but it was the same thing against Kansas, basically, where it was like they were in the game until the very end. And yeah, they didn't make the plays necessary to win, but they played really hard for that entire game. Like I guess I'm wondering what kind of they talked during after the Ohio State game about how hard practices are. You know, I don't think it's like he's going easy on them.
Hard to them. Maybe it's hard to them, but maybe that's not hard to most other people.
Yeah,
maybe that's a problem.
Yeah. I guess.
And I don't know because I'm not in practice, and I definitely do not know that. And let me say before I say anything else, props to Dylan because he is standing here taking all of this and dealing with it and just batting these balls back like he's playing ping pong against himself, which is difficult to do. And so mad respect, dude. That's what we need, though. That's what I love. That's what I don't want someone just to come on and agree. That's why I love people like you who work as hard as you do and have the knowledge that you have, and great respect. And I hope everyone else understands that as well. But will Indiana be an underdog at home against Minnesota?
I don't believe so. No, they'll probably be less of a favorite than you'd like, probably 2 to 3 points favorite, but they will be. I would think they would be the favorite. I know Minnesota is better this year. They are not that much better.
Yeah, this is a great point. Let's see, where was it? I just lost it. Anyway, said that Minnesota barely scored the last part of the game. Not only did they barely score, where did my stats go? They hit one field goal in their last 8 attempts, none in the last nearly 5 minutes, and still won the freaking game.
Yeah.
They shot 32% from the field and won the game. They shot 23% from 3 from behind the arc and won the game. They shot 68% from the free throw line, but won the game.
Yes.
Man, there's a whole lot of stuff going on there.
It stinks. I will say, IU's defense is pretty good. IU played pretty good defense last
Or is it
night.
just Rutgers is that bad?
No, so Rutgers is bad, but they're not that bad. IU play especially early in that second half. I was like, hey, I love the activity IU has on defense right now. They played good defense. There was that stretch at the end of the first half. Rutgers went on a 6-0 run while going 1 for 11 from the field. IU played terrific defense.
That one was funny. I was like,
it really was.
God.
It was like, come on.
Yeah, they were like 1 of 12, weren't they? One of 12, and they were on I was like, and they're still on a damn 6-0 run. Are you kidding me?
IU was playing way, way better than Rutgers for that entire stretch. Like they were getting good shots, and it looked like an Archie game where it was like, you're getting good shots, you're playing good defense, make a shot, and they could, nothing was going in. And then in addition, which was different than Archie, is that IU was also getting to the foul line, and they weren't making those. And it was just like, come on, you were the better team. Just win the game. You're the better team. And they couldn't do it. And it was driving me nuts because I knew everyone was going to say the sky is falling. And I was like, I watched the game. They were the better team for 35 minutes of that game, and they didn't get it done. And it's frustrating, and I get it.
And I hate that we didn't talk about the Purdue game, and that's my fault, Dylan, because, hey, Nebraska, here's a cool thing that I learned last night, though. Brian Evans was on the postgame show with me. He realized that he saw this Tominaka kid on Nebraska, and he's like, wait a minute, I played with his dad. He played with his dad the last few years he was playing professionally overseas. And it's like, oh my gosh. So this kid didn't just fall off a turnip truck. He's good for a reason. But Nebraska, how about them, man? They're on a roll. And but we've got to take a break. I hate that. Thank you so much for today, because you've had to stand there and take a lot of bullets. And I'm glad you brought your flak jacket, brother.
I'm glad to do it. This is fun, Jim. Thanks for having me on.
It was a blast, and I love these are just fun to do, and I hope people enjoy that for what it is and not get too serious about it. But what's up next for you, my friend?
Yeah, I will be at both games this weekend. IU playing Minnesota, and then Purdue is at home on Friday, and who they're playing is Penn State. They're playing Penn State, so I will be at both of those games, and looking forward to those atmospheres as always.
Can't wait, brother. Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette. Make sure you're giving him a follow. We appreciate you, brother.
Absolutely, Jim. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, we've got more coming up. Kyle Neddenriep, the main Indy Star, Rick Bozich as well. Back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market. Boy, I wish I had a thing to measure my blood pressure right now. This is like Archie Miller-esque. I swear I can feel, literally, I can physically feel it.
Dylan, I lean more towards you. I was very angry myself last night, but I do think big picture, I do think there is more overreaction than there is.
I do not. I think this is a continuation of what has been coming.
Yeah. If we had talked about Purdue, I would have done the same thing. Yeah, if we had talked about Purdue, I would have done the same thing, because Purdue fans are they're really struggling right now. They're so sad, and
they lost on the road to one of the best teams in the conference right now.
Yeah, exactly.
They lost to a team that almost beat them last year. So what the hell?
Yeah,
Purdue
I would not be
undefeated.
No, I would not be worried at all if I was Purdue.
Well, no, I wouldn't either. I think that winning that game, it's set up for Nebraska to win, man. They know that they could play with Purdue because they did it last year, and they're playing better this year than they were last season. So
they went 14 of 23 from the 3-point line. What a game for Nebraska, man. Hey, that's my final thought. You talk about Tominaga. Tominaga rules, man. He is one of the best players in the entire damn country. He is so much fun. That's my final thought, Jim. I'll talk to you later. All right.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate you.
All right. See you later.
Oh my God.
Now, if Indiana loses in a minute, what sets up this Minnesota game now? This is a must win this weekend. You can't lose at home in Minnesota after what happened at Rutgers, because then you really put yourself in the danger zone after that, with the 3 games you have coming after that, with Purdue, Wisconsin, and Illinois. So.
Danger zone. Dude, they lose to Minnesota at home, and there will be all kinds of SHI.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's what you're really in danger of, the season being in jeopardy if you can't beat Minnesota at home, even though it's a decent.
Well, see, here's where I disagree that the season is not already in jeopardy. It's already in jeopardy because of what they've not been able to do against mediocre to bad teams. If you can't do that against mediocre and bad teams,
there we go. 10 seconds.
What do you expect against
Kyle should know, or Kyle does know, but he hasn't responded to me, so he should be on shortly.
Please, so we can
That's
talk about something different.
mystonecrestliving.com for more details. This segment is brought to you by Hoosier Hanks East. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Wednesday. Thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate you as always. Brought to you by our good friends from Andy Moore Honda, as well as Hoosier Hanks, where we did the post-game show last night, and each time had my my specialty pizza there, thin crust, pepperoni, sausage, mushroom, onions, banana peppers. That is the shizzle, man. And if you go there and ask for the Jim special or ISB special, they'll give it to you. Ask Benny for the ISB specialty pizza. And he's got this, not only is it thin crust, but Benny started adding this buttery bottom to, and it, oh my gosh, whew, it makes it a little flaky. Pretty good. Pretty good. Kyle Neddenriep from the Indy Star joins us now. Kyle, how are you, sir?
Doing good. How are you, Jim?
I'm doing great because you don't cover IU basketball, and I don't have to talk about that this segment. And that is going to be the best part of my day, probably.
Yeah, I was driving home last night, and I was actually listening to Purdue, but I caught a little bit of what was going on with IU. So yeah, it's not a good day for either of the in-state teams.
No, but Purdue that's not a surprise. I mean, they nearly lost at Nebraska last year, and Nebraska is much better this year. They're one of the top teams in the Big Ten. Let's see, where are they currently in the standings? Still sitting, they're 3-2 right now, so they're sitting down there 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in sixth, which is kind of surprising, but it's early on at Wisconsin standing at the top. Purdue already with 2 losses. That's a little surprising. Not that they weren't going to lose. You're not going to go through the season undefeated, even though the Big Ten is down. Road games are just tough. No matter what conference you're in, they are, because you're always going to have teams that are half the league is decent enough at home to where when you have a home crowd, that's just going to make it tough on you. So a lot of people talking about, go ahead.
I was going to say, it sounded like Nebraska from listening to Rob Blackman there at the end of the game. I think they shot the lights out of the building, and then, and they are, like you said, they're better. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to go on the road, but you're ranked number 1, you got the target on you, everybody's court storming on you, and that's difficult. But yeah, I don't know if it's a weird year. The Big Ten, I don't know if it's quite as good or it's hard to tell just yet. But yeah, definitely. IU's going through some stuff right now. I think Purdue will be fine. Their story is always going to be the tournament. That's they can go out and win the Big Ten and win it again. I think everybody's probably looking forward to how they're going to perform. Based on past history in the tournament, which is unfair based on their success every single year in and year out. But I think probably everyone knows it's going to come down to what you do in March.
Well, not that this is about Indiana, it's not, but their next game is against Minnesota, who has won 7 in a row. 7 in a row, including a streak that started with a win over Florida Gulf. No, it did not. It started with a win over Nebraska.
Yeah.
And then Florida Gulf Coast State, which is ironic. They were on everybody's schedule, it seems like.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's going to be fun to watch this year. A lot of people have been mentioning Sean East, the former New Albany high school player, played with Romeo Langford. They won a state championship together. And he has been a nomad. I mean, a nomad. He couldn't get recruited out of high school to save his life. And I think he was overlooked because Romeo got so much of the attention. And it wasn't just Romeo Langford. As a matter of fact, if they don't have damn it, David, what's his name?
Oh gosh, you're gonna
receiver at Purdue.
Oh, David Bell. You talking about David Bell?
David Bell was a teammate when they were sophomores and won the state title. I think that was 16, I believe. But he was on that team. If he's not on that team, they don't win either. But Sean East was a much bigger part to that team than people realized. But he was not ready for Division I play. I don't think coming out of high school, his body wasn't ready. He needed to do a lot of things, and he's been a nomad. Someone I saw mention that he's transferred 4 times. So he's been around, but he's worked his way up. He's now at Missouri. He's playing with Tamar Bates, a former IU transfer, and you talk about a guy who was seeing the payoff after working his butt to get there. You got to give it to Sean East.
Yeah, I know he went to a prep school for a year as well, and then kind of blew up and had a really good, kind of burst onto the scene. Now he was a guy, you could see it in high school. He's a good athlete, lanky, very skinny. I mean, that was the thing about him in high school. He's very skinny, but yeah, you could tell he was a player. He was a huge part of what they did there, like you mentioned. And yeah, it seems like he's been around now for like 3 decades, because with the transferring and then the COVID year but yeah, I don't know if he's ever really become like a outstanding shooter necessarily, but really good point guard, slasher. Yeah, I mean it's been cool to see. And then I sort of still follow Missouri basketball, so it's been kind of neat to see him play there and have success there. I know they're not quite as good as they were a year ago, but yeah, he's been a guy who's definitely maximized his college experience and career and become a really good player at Missouri these last couple of years.
Yeah, and that's always great to see because there was always so many kids from the state of Indiana, and you're probably the best historian on that, though, that end up at so many different places. Just look throughout the Big Ten rosters. I will guarantee you there is not a state in the Big Ten that has more players on more different rosters than from Indiana. Iowa is always reaching in here. Michigan State, Ohio State. There's Northwestern, Illinois. They all currently, I mean, you got Luke Goody over at Illinois right now. Iowa's had different Indiana players over the last couple of years. So they're everywhere. Michigan State currently with Xavier Booker. There's a kid on Michigan's team. Indiana has as few of Indiana players as half the teams in the conference. That is just strange to see.
Yeah, it's just kind of been the way they've recruited, and that goes back even farther, before Woodson a little bit. So I don't know I don't know why that is necessarily, but they obviously have some connections in the East Coast and they have for a while. That's sort of been where they've been getting some players. So it is a little bit weird, and Michigan State almost recruits like it's they almost recruit like it's an in-state situation anyway. Tom Izzo is always, they really target the top guys or, the ones that they feel like can help them. So they're always a factor. Michigan has long been a factor recruiting here. Obviously, Purdue's roster is full of Indiana players right now. It has been, they've done a good job kind of getting who they want. So you're battling that.
They're like 80%.
Yeah, they're like an Indiana All-Star team, basically. And then they mix in some other guys. But, yeah, it's interesting. And then, I kind of lose track sometimes. That
reminds me of somebody, not to interrupt you, that roster construction that you just talked about with Purdue, that is what Indiana used to be. Exactly. That's the blueprint that Bob Knight used. He had nothing but guys either from Indiana or directly around here with a few sprinkled in, and they had a system and it worked. But Purdue looks more like Indiana than Indiana does.
Well, yeah, and I mean Matt Painter, I've talked to him about, he grew up an Indiana fan, so he's an Indiana guy, obviously, and he's a Purdue guy now, obviously, but so I don't know if that has a part in it necessarily, but he does know, he's obviously recruits the state hard. He's out at game. I see him all the time, at games, and he's got, PJ Thompson, has a bigger role on his team, who he's from, went to Brebeuf, and he's in Indiana. So you just have so many guys who are like interwoven into the fabric of Indiana high school basketball as well as Purdue. So it makes sense that they get, and I think there's just a high amount of respect, and the success he's had there obviously leads to that more and more as well. But yeah, I mean, I was going to say I lose track of guys sometimes. I went and was like, oh, how's Jalen Blackman doing at Stetson this year? And then I look it up. It's like, oh my goodness, he's he's having a huge. I tweeted out some of his stats last week, but it's like and then that night I think he hit another game-winning shot. So his efficiency is really good. Good to see he's found a good fit there at Stetson. Of course, I tweet that out immediately. It's like IU fans jumping all over it, and I don't know if there's who knows in the transfer portal world anymore, but you would think Stetson's a place you could make a jump from if you want to, or maybe he feels like that's where he can have success. I don't know. I haven't talked to him lately, but he's cool to see guys like that. Kind of what I'm getting at. You kind of maybe lose track. Check in, but yeah, there's guys everywhere who I've covered and have played in the state over the last many years who place that that's been the case since the 1940s, 30s, and 40s. Players who go all over the place and play, and it's still the case today. And it's speaking to that in-state recruiting though. I always say, like, it doesn't become an issue until you start losing, and then it's like, well, why aren't we? Purdue's winning with these Indiana guys. Why aren't if you're IU fan, you're like, if you were 12-1, I mean, you wouldn't care if your players were from Alaska, all of them, but then once you start losing, it becomes a thing, So, it doesn't, to me, like, it doesn't matter where you get them from if you're successful. But then when you're not successful and you don't have in-state guys, then it becomes sort of a story into itself.
Absolutely. Indiana high school basketball rolls on now. If we have passed the Christmas break, kind of deep into the heart of the season, and things start to solidify. Who is finding their way at the top? And I know Lawrence North is been up there, which is no surprise. They're a team that you usually find up there. But are there some teams that are separating themselves?
Yeah, Marion County tournament is this week. I was actually at the Johnson County tournament last night with Whiteland and Franklin, but I'll go to one of the Marion County games tonight, and then I'll be at Southport for the semifinals and finals this weekend. But yeah, Lawrence North is kind of that. They're playing in that, which is why I bring it up. They're undefeated to this point. I think, I've been putting them number one in our local Fab 15, and I've got Fisher's number 2. Now that's flip flopped in the state poll. Fisher's is number 1, and I think Fisher's probably has been the best team that I've seen, like, playing the best. I still think LN can be that best team. And they not that they played poorly, obviously they're undefeated, but I think they can get to another level. Xavier Robinson went over 1,000 points last night. He's only still a junior, so he's a really good player. Obviously he's got IU, Notre Dame, all kinds of offers, so I think he can lead that team. And they've got other guys too. Brennan Miller is a sophomore who I think will be on people's radar, if not already, who's having a really good season. Then several other guys on that team as well. But yeah, I'd say, Lawrence North, to me, Fisher's right there, 1A, 1B. And I think
is there anybody that had a better week than, I was going to say, anybody have a better week than Cathedral did? And are they just trying to rack up the frequent flyer miles? Yeah.
They go to Hammond and then to Providence. So yeah, you're covering a lot of ground there in one weekend, or 1 week, I guess it was, a few days apart. But yeah, Cathedral's really been a surprise, I would say. They lost a lot from last year. I did not expect, and they have the city tournament next week where they'll probably see Addicts in the championship potentially. But yeah, they've been really good. Brady Kohler, of course, he's a guy that is starting to get some real interest and offers. Who's a junior. This junior class is crazy good in the state. So, but yeah, Cathedral, and I think Westfield's a team too. I saw them last week against Carmel. They're also undefeated. They have a lot of tests upcoming that will kind of tell us more about them. But I moved Cathedral to 3. I think those 3, and then Westfield maybe next, and then a lot of other teams that are pretty good too. Like Ben Davis could go out this week and have a if they win the county, that would be, a big thing, obviously, for them, and kind of prove that, all right, we're the defending champs and we're still here. So,
Kyle Neddenriep from the Indy Star, always a pleasure. We appreciate you, my friend, and look forward to talking to you again next week to see what happened this weekend, especially with the Marion County tournament. Make sure you give Kyle a follow and be a subscriber. Keep local papers alive. Kyle, thank you, brother. Appreciate you.
no problem. Thanks, Jim.
You betcha. Hey, up next, Rick Bozich joins us. Looking forward to it. Back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Good day, sir.
How are you?
I'm just peachy. Just another day in paradise. Everybody's happy. It's kumbaya. Everybody's singing, seeing rainbows and unicorns.
Woody doesn't like the questions, huh?
Boy, doesn't like to be asked a question that here's the thing that cracks me up. He always answers it the same way, but he never answers it. Everybody understands the need, and I should save this for on air, to substitute. Of course, and no one's denying that. But it's bringing in a whole damn new team at the same time, and I don't understand what he doesn't understand about that. That is and when he gets pushed on it, I'm not going to answer that to the fans, to you, to anybody. Well, I guess you don't have to.
Who asked him the question? Was it somebody locally or?
Well, here's the funny thing. The person that started it off, of all people, the only person that's not a freaking reporter there.
George. Who all was there? Who actually made it to the game?
I had some people there. I don't know the answer to that. I'd say not very many because they did a Zoom,
Right.
Which is very rare. But I do not know the answer to that question.
I don't know. Not good.
No, it's not. I had Joe Hillman and Brian Evans on for a post-game show last night.
And what'd they say?
Oh, Jesus. Joe Hillman does not hold back.
What'd
Brian Evans doesn't either, but he had nothing, very little good to say.
About the players or about Woodson?
It's about the team. I'll keep it in that because he did not specify. He definitely did not call out Woodson, but it's not that he has doubts or questions, but there's no discipline, no chemistry, no identity, no basketball IQ, no accountability. And you put all that together, and last night is what you get. They might win some games, but they're going to lose a hell of a lot more.
All right, here we go, guys.
0.9% APR financing for 36 months on a 2023 Honda Ridgeline. Go to AndyMooreHonda.com and get more to your door.
This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville and Evansville. Pizza, burgers, beer. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back. It is Wednesday, January 10th here, Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Rick Bozich joins us now. Rick, and as I said in the break, it's everyone's singing Kumbaya. It's rainbows and unicorns. It's happy, and Hoosier Nation. All the fans are excited. The funny thing is, they're probably not feeling much different. The Purdue fans are probably feeling kind of similar today, which they shouldn't. they lost to a good team last night on the road, to a team that they damn near lost to last year. So not surprising. But that doesn't make losing fans go crazy anyway. But the difference is, Indiana just seems to be on a truck that's heading downhill in neutral right now, and the brakes kind of seem to be out. But there aren't answers to basic questions like, why can't a team shoot free throws all of a sudden? Not all of a sudden, but all of that. And it's not everybody. If I see somebody say they need to practice free throws, again, I'm going to throw up. It has not. They can practice till the cows come home. It has nothing to do with that. It's either in their head, they're either not focused, or your mechanics are bad. It's one of those things, but none of it is being fixed is the problem. But there's so many different things: roster makeup, guard deficiencies, shooting deficiencies. I mentioned last night, Rick, Rutgers stats are amazing. They finished the game hitting one of their last 8 shots with no field goals in nearly the last 5 minutes of the game. They shot 32% from the field. They shot 23% from behind the arc, and they shot 68% at the free throw line, yet won the game pretty easily over Indiana. And they're probably, if not the worst, trending to be the worst team in the conference. So none of that adds up to positives on the side for Indiana.
No, that's just because Rutgers is a more mentally tough and committed to defense team than Indiana is. Indiana's been out-toughed by Rutgers now, 5 or 6 years in a row in Piscataway? I mean, they can't win there.
2018 is the last time they won there.
Yeah, Rutgers believes they're the tougher program, and they are, until Indiana proves otherwise. And you mentioned the thing about the free throws. I mean, I agree with you. They could practice 500 a day for the rest of the week. It's mental concentration when you're at the line and approaching it as that this free throw could decide the game. There's a lot of casualness there where I missed one, no big deal. I missed another one, no big deal. Well, it is a big deal because they had a chance to really put Rutgers away or get some separation where they could have some comfort in the game. But they lost the game because they couldn't shoot free throws. They couldn't shoot threes. They turned it over 18 times. And the point guard did a dumb thing and got thrown out of the game, which you can't do. A 6th-year player can't make a play like it's embarrassing for him to make a play like that. And, unless something changes and changes pretty drastically, I'll be very confident if you can write it down that on January 10th, 2024, I'll say they're not going to make the NCAA tournament.
Oh, I would be shocked if they make the tournament.
Right.
I don't know how they get out of the Big Ten without a losing record.
Right.
Honestly. And I just don't see a change coming. It's a trend. It's a downward trend. And I don't see anything that's going to turn that trend around. They have not shot the ball well all season. They've had games where they have, but overall, not. There does not seem to be an offensive plan to what I don't know what the plan actually is, other than just get the ball into the bigs and let them do what they're going to do, which hell, I can do that. I can coach that, and I'm as dumb as anybody. But
it's a poorly constructed team. The big guys don't complement each other. There's too many of them. Mbako, I don't know what he was considered coming in. I guess a small forward. He's not. He doesn't have small forward skills. He's not a good ball handler. He's more of a power forward. So you're basically playing with 3 big guys who have to get the ball in the post. I mean, Mbako can shoot threes, and he doesn't really make them at a high percentage yet. But the other 2 guys are post players, and that's not the way the game's played anymore. And they don't have a guard who really is a dynamic player with the ball. It's an old-fashioned term, but you call them triple threat players. They can beat you off the dribble. They can beat you with their jump shot, or they can beat you by beating their man and passing the ball and getting somebody else a better shot. They don't have a triple threat player on their team. They don't. And that's just absurd at this point. in Mike Woodson's career at Indiana that they don't have a guard. They don't have a guard who'll make first, second, or third team All Big Ten. They don't have one, and you're not going to win doing that. I mean, it's just not going to happen, and it's bad roster construction at this point, and it's something that is the first thing that needs to be fixed at the end of this season.
And last night, Mike was asked again about his substitution pattern, and
Right.
I don't understand what he doesn't understand. That people know that you have to substitute, that you're not going to play 5 guys for the entire game. We all know that, but why? I don't understand why he doesn't understand that you don't have to swap them all out at the same time,
Right.
and have 4 starters on the bench at the same time. There's
Right.
a reason you're starting these 5 guys that you most likely think those are your best 5 players. So why would you take 4 of your best players off of the floor at the same time and put guys in front of on there that could not beat them out?
Well, I mean, I'm right with you. We've seen this from the very beginning of the year when he made the large group substitutions that Indiana lost all of its momentum, and the second group wasn't capable of doing the job. And to keep doing it is insanity. And the stats bear it out. I think it was Tony Adrangea had a great stat last night about when 4 of those guys off the bench are in there, how Indiana's effectiveness goes way down. That's part one of it. And it's not just a media thing. Fans, everybody sees it. He has to see it, but he doesn't want to hear it from the media or for fans on the way he's going to substitute his team. I don't know if that comes from being coming from Coach Knight, but you know what? He's not Coach Knight. Coach Knight could push back on questions because he won 3 national championships and went to a bunch of Final Fours. And the other thing I don't understand about that is
he would also sit a starter like that if he didn't do what he was supposed to do to help the team win.
And the other thing is, Mike Woodson coached in New York City in the NBA. I mean, he was used to getting questioned by the media. I don't know whether he thinks he's coming to Indiana and nobody's going to question what he's doing, but he's wrong. And especially when you lose games by big margins to Auburn and to UConn, when you blow a lead in the last 7 minutes against Kansas, when you can't win at Rutgers, and when you're lucky to beat Morehead State and Army and Florida Gulf Coast. You're fortunate. Those are games that have kind of gone either way. When you're fortunate to win some of those games, people are going to look at this and say, hey, this isn't working right. So there's a better way to answer the question than by saying, I'm not going to answer that question. It's not going to make the question go away. People are going to keep asking it, Jim.
But it makes me really think, does he not understand the question? I don't know that he really understands it. He has continued to answer it by saying, I can't play these guys 40 minutes a game. Well, again, not to steal a Woodson phrase, but again, we all know that. But
right
here, that's not what was asked, and it's not what has been asked, and that's where the discrepancy is.
How would this work, Coach Woodson? We need to get you over the hump of understanding this question.
I thought that had sailed. I thought that ship sailed too, but it was back last night.
What people are trying to say is, can you alter your substitution pattern in a way that there's always at least 3 starters on the court? Because when you go 4 or 5 deep with the subs, it's not working. And people can go back to the Florida Gulf Coast game and say, look at this, look at this, look at this. The bench hasn't developed in that way. They don't have any guards. I mean, the starting guards aren't good enough. The backup guards certainly aren't good enough.
And this, whatever style you want to call it, system, I don't know that there is a system in place per se, but style, whatever you want to call it, it seems to be very, very NBA-ish, which is great. But on an NBA roster, you have 17 guys that are all professional players. Every one of them. The worst guy on the bench was a pretty damn good player. He may not be LeBron James, may not be Tyrese Halliburton, but they're on an NBA roster, and that makes him a pretty damn good player. That's not the case in college. And it's not the case with a team that is minus a scholarship, that is minus an injured player. And there are just so many things that go into it. And yet there are, it hasn't worked for Indiana running that style. It was great when you had Trey Jackson Davis at his peak and you could throw it inside and he just willed a basket, but you don't have that right now. I mean, you've got some players, but you don't have that to lean on. And I've seen a lot of people say he covered up a lot of deficiencies. Maybe he did, but
He did.
Because it showed they did not use Miller Kopp. You know, I was pretty hard on him, but apparently he's doing okay in the G League.
Yeah, he is. He's shooting well. Better than he shot in Indiana. He's getting more attempts. I'm going to keep coming back to the guards, man. The guards control the offense. The guards control what shots you're going to get. The guards are the first point of attack on defense. They're the ones that can make the other team uncomfortable. The guards are the ones who set the tone. Are you going to play the game the way Rutgers wants to play it, or are you going to play the game the way Indiana wants to play it? Too often the guards do not impose their will on the other team. Xavier Johnson was bad against Nebraska. He was very good against Ohio State and Indiana won. He was bad against Rutgers. And I'm not saying it's 100% this way, but Trey Galloway, for the most part, plays well in Assembly Hall and does not play well on the road. And last night, I mean, I don't know. After what he didn't make, he's 0 for 4 on threes. He took the most shots. He was 4 for 13. He missed both of his free throws. I mean, he had 5 assists. He did do that well. But you know, he's got to play better. I mean, he's probably a 6th or 7th man. That's what he is on a team that makes the NCAA tournament. He's a 6th or 7th man.
Yeah, and this Indiana team right now, I don't know where they go from here. They're playing a Minnesota team at home this Friday. Minnesota is second in the Big Ten right now at 3-1.
Who have they beaten? Have they beaten anybody though? I don't know.
You know what? I've tried to pull their.
I can.
They won 7 in a row.
Pretty sure they beat Michigan State recently. I can't. Oh, again, I don't have it pulled up in front of me, but I know they have at least one solid Big Ten win so far.
Right, and they haven't played since Sunday. They've beaten Nebraska at home.
Their current 7-game winning streak started with a win over Nebraska.
Yeah, they beat Michigan on the road, and they beat Maryland at home. They've won, and then they lost.
Well,
they've
had a nice start to their schedule, kind of eased their way into it. Coming into Assembly Hall will be very, very difficult for them just because it's.
Hey, they're a good 3-point shooting team, though. They shoot 36%, so look out for that.
Well, that means they're going to shoot 46% at Assembly Hall because that's what teams have done this year. But Indiana has a lot of problems they've got to get fixed and fast. I don't know that the NCAA tournament is even within their grasp, I'll be honest with you, because I just don't know that they can fix these problems that they have because nothing is – they're just – I've said it earlier today – when you combine all the factors that there doesn't seem to be discipline on that team.
There's no leadership. You can't have your senior 6-year point guard doing the stuff that Xavier Johnson does and expect him to be a good leader. I mean, you can't. Right? I mean, I just don't see it. I don't see it.
I'm surprised. What I'm surprised most about is a guy that played for Knight, who was the king of accountability, has some of the least accountability that I've seen in a while. I mean, Archie Miller doesn't count, but he doesn't seem to hold players accountable either by using the bench for gameplay or off the court stuff. There are no consequences for this team. Bad play, doesn't matter. You're going to start. You do something wrong, doesn't matter. You're going to play.
Well, we'll see Friday night if there's any consequences for Xavier Johnson.
Well, is he finally pushed to that point? Has Mike Woodson been forced? Has his hand been forced because of all these things? His reaction to the question last night, that shows, it's getting to him as well, I think.
I mean, I think he's surprised that after, just because they won the tournament the last couple of years and won one game each year, that I think he thought people would give him, and because he's a former IU player, there'd be more of a grace period, but that's not the way it is. There's been a lot of consternation about recruiting, and there's been consternation about the way this team played from the very first game. I was there, you were there, the Florida Gulf Ghost came. They were not impressive. I was there, you were there, the second game against Army. This team was not impressive. They really, I mean, what's been their best win? Ohio State, I guess, is their best win.
Yep,
yeah,
no question.
But they're rare when they're winning games. They're rarely exceeding what's expected of them. They're frequently underperforming, and I don't think it's being unfair, overly critical to say that. Then that's why the analytics say what they do. And I know that Tom Izzo said the other night after the Northwestern game when they lost that analytics are crap, but you know what? Analytics are something that the committee looks at, and they look at Indiana and see them in 90s in Ken Palm or over triple digits in the net. I mean, they're not even going to be considered for the NCAA tournament.
Rick Bozich is with us from WDRB.com. We've got a lot more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, and back with that right after this break.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market. Oh, buddy. Who's in worse shape? Louisville or Indiana?
That's a really stupid question.
It's kind of jokingly, but the thing is, you can turn programs around quickly now.
Look at Rick
Pitino. Portal.
Look at Chris Beard.
Exactly. And everybody said that it was expected for them to go down this year. Not by me. You cannot regress in your third season. If your goal is to be successful, you can't take 2 steps forward and 1 step back, which is what they're doing and what they've done. You have to recruit. You have to land the guys to not regress. That didn't happen. You leave a scholarship open, you're not recruiting the guys you need.
Well, here's the thing. Look at it. They don't have a guard for next year. They put all their emphasis on Boogie Fland, and they didn't get him, and now they got nothing.
Now, here's my thoughts on the guards, and I said this to Jim yesterday. You have a lot of young guards that you can still develop, but next year you've got to find 1 or 2 dudes in the portal who are veterans for your guards, for your starting guards, that is.
What young guards? Who?
I think Gabe Cupps will be fine. You give him another year. He's not somebody who needs to be starting next year. He's somebody who needs to be a good bench player, not only this year, but next year as well. Someone else needs to be, first of all, better than Xavier Johnson, but fill that role. That's someone that's not Gabe Cupps. And then you also have Ja'Kai Newton back next year, who we don't really know how good he'll be.
If he's going to be healthy.
Highly touted. Yeah,
that's this will be 2 whole years he hadn't played. I'm not convinced he's ever going to be able to play.
That's a good point.
He had microfracture surgery. I mean, you can't leave yourself that vulnerable. You have to have somebody there that they got to get a good guard out of the portal. I mean, they got to. You can't have. I don't know. you can't have Mr. Basketball who's there like it's a ceremonial player on the bench.
Especially when he is put in to be used, he plays decent. He's giving you everything he has. I'm not saying he's the answer, but I guarantee you, if there's one guy on that roster that you know that if you put in the game that he's going to give you 110%, it's Anthony Leal. That I promise you. He might make a mistake, but I promise you he's going to bust his ass.
Seconds. Here we go, guys.
Chop Shock Market and Table, a part of the Wild Food Group, is your butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry in Sellersburg. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Wednesday. Thanks a lot for being with us. We appreciate you as always. Rick Bozich from WDRB.com with me now. How was Publix, by the way?
I'm eating my Publix parfait. I was about number 20 in line this morning for the opening of the first Publix store in Louisville or the state of Kentucky.
Now, why were you in line for this? What drove you to go?
I don't know. I mean, I live a low thrill life, I guess. I thought it'd be fun. I love Publix. I thought it'd be cool to go there and be one of the first ones in. So Ruby and I packed up this morning and went out and got there. It opened at 7. We got there about 6:20, and I got out, left her in the car, and went in and got in line and got me a pub sub for lunch and clipped my coupons on my iPad and got all their good bargains and deals and had my Publix parfait and enjoyed my visit there. It was fun. A lot of people. It's going to be a mob scene there for a while. Are you a Publix fan?
Yeah, they're in the southern part of the country most, right? Where's your experience with them?
I've been to Florida and been to them. I've been to
that's been
North
my
Carolina, Jacksonville, that's part of Florida. Hilton Head, I think, area maybe. There was one I was in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Nashville, I've been to one in Nashville. Yeah.
Let's see, Alan. Alan Katzman. Put your bets down. Says he thought that Galloway would be a throwback IU guy because he's a coach's son. He's an Indiana kid, but he's not a shooter.
He can't shoot.
He's not a point guard. He's not. I don't know that he's quick enough.
I mean, he makes threes occasionally when the ball is rotated to him. Catch and shoot, set shot threes. He cannot beat his man off the dribble and shoot a jump shot. Have you ever seen him do that ever? Really? He shoots floaters and driving layups and catch and shoot shot. He's not going to do. It's a bad example to compare him to the best shooter of all time at IU, Steve Alford, but you got to have a guy like Alford or Jordan Hulls or some Yogi, somebody who can take the ball, beat his man, create an advantage, raise up and shoot a jump shot, right? I mean, Johnson can do that occasionally, but he really even has a push shot. He's not a classic jump shot guy. It's just, as you can tell, it's just mind-boggling to me that they can have 6 guards on the team and they don't have one guy who can do the things that a top-level Big Ten guard can do. They don't. That's to me, that's the biggest problem. You have to have, and then if you're not at the small forward position, he's not a small forward. He's not a good ball handler in Baco. He's not. He can't really drive the ball and put pressure on the defense. So people are going to do what Rutgers did, which is play off on the perimeter, pack the lane a little bit inside, and dare Indiana to make shots and beat them. And most of the time, they're not going to make the shots and they're not going to win.
Andy says that Woody benched 5 guys at Northwestern one year. Well, that's because they snuck out the night before and broke curfew.
Right.
There was not really a choice there. So that I don't know that counts, especially since that's the only time and the only example of that really doesn't stand out. So
I don't think, Xavier didn't miss any time after his off-season incident with in the car. And now this thing, and
Baco didn't miss any time from the Taco Bell incident.
Right. No, I agree.
No consequences.
Woodson was on the team when 3 guys got kicked off after they got back from Alaska. Oh
man, that's not good. When your program has as many arrests as tournament wins, you have a problem. Yeah. And no, I don't think that Ohio State beat themselves. Indiana won that game. Unfortunately, that consistency, nowhere close to even being half of the time. They don't play like that even half the time. That's the problem. Consistency, consistency on defense or offense, consistency at the free throw line, abysmal. Consistency shooting the ball, abysmal. Defense comes and goes. The only consistent, as for the most part this year, has been Malik and Kalel, where those guys have been pretty solid throughout, but they've had their issues, but they're the probably most consistent parts of this program right now.
Yeah, I mean, Ware had a nice game last night. I mean, anytime you have 17 rebounds and 13 points, 3 blocks, he did his part. Renew had a solid game, but I mean, here's the guard. All right, add these numbers up: 1 for 4, 4 for 13. That's 5 for 17. 1 for 1, 6 for 18, and Gunn 2 for 7.
Boy, you went too fast.
8 for 25. 8 for 25. So they shot 32% from the guards. Not going to work. Not going to work.
Well, I keep pointing out Rutgers numbers last night. They ended the game not scoring for the last 5 minutes of the game. No field goals the last 5 minutes. They shoot 32% on the night.
Yeah, they're a brutal offensive team too.
Behind the arc, and yet easily, hell, they went 1 of 11 at the end of the half, and we're on a 6-0 run.
But again, Indiana gives up 19 offensive rebounds.
That is a number I haven't brought up today. And the second chance points 12-1 because of that. That's a huge disparity. Then you add the turnovers, 18 turnovers, and they get 18 points off of those turnovers. So the differential there of 9 and plus 11, there's 20. That's 20 points right there just in that. Offensive rebounding and turnovers. 20 points.
I mean, I'd say this game Friday night is a must-win because if you look after that, it's Purdue at home, at Wisconsin, at Illinois. If they don't beat Minnesota, they're looking at a 5-game losing streak. And then if Mike Woodson thinks the questions and the complaining is not good now, he's going to find out what it's really like to be the Indiana basketball coach.
Yeah, and then Scott Dolson's probably going to start feeling a little heat because from a financial standpoint, nothing's going to happen this season. I don't think it matters what happens. There's not going to be a change, but Indiana will be looking, if let's say that a year from now that does happen and they have to go through this again with another coach, that is not a good look on an athletic department.
No, but as you mentioned, if you get the right guy, it's a quick turnaround. I think we were off the air and we talked about that. I mean, Chris Beard's doing it his first year at Ole Miss. Rick Pitino's doing it his first year at St. John's. We saw a couple years ago, Tommy Lloyd did it his first year at Arizona. If you get the right guy in there, you can get it going pretty quickly. And they haven't got the right guy yet. I mean, I don't think. And I'm not saying, Woodson has done okay. But what we've seen this year, I think, has been alarming.
Yeah, because he's had more talent than Indiana had probably just prior to that. And while they have had a little more success, it doesn't seem like there is a trend that is going to continue with that.
And you look up
like they're treading water, spinning the wheels.
And you look up the road 2 hours, and I know that people will point out the Purdue's failures in the NCAA tournament, but Purdue's good, and they've been consistently good. And yeah, they got blown out last night by Nebraska, but they don't have to worry about being in the NCAA tournament. They will be in the NCAA tournament, and
they'll be a number 1 seed.
Yeah, and they're doing it with Indiana kids, a lot of them.
Mostly.
Yeah, mostly Indiana kids. So that's the way it used to be flipped, where Indiana did it with Indiana kids.
It's someone mentioned earlier, Purdue recruits the kids. I think it was the cash man that said Purdue recruits the kids that Indiana used to.
Well, I think I've read that Braden Smith kind of was interested in IU.
He would have crawled to IU. And right. I say that Purdue fans lose their mind. It's not a knock on Purdue.
Right.
It's just the truth. And first of all, they don't know that. Secondly, they don't want to hear that. And today, would he crawl to IU? Hell no.
No,
he'd run away from Bloomington without question. But then, no, that's not the truth. And yeah, it's the recruiting is going in a different direction. And sometimes it's been good, but there's a lot of misses, which there's going to be misses. I understand that, but there's a lot of big misses.
Yeah, I mean, Archie wasn't interested, I don't think, in Mason Gillis. That was a big miss. They didn't get first. They tried to get him and couldn't get him. They couldn't get
Trey Kaufman-Rand, who's from
Right.
Sellersburg and would have never.
They tried though. You have to
Purdue.
give them. They did try, and they just
He
whatever
wasn't going to play for Archie Miller.
whatever reason their message didn't connect. And Purdue's got a few more coming. They got this kid coming from Brownstown who's supposed to be a pretty good player, Jack Benter. There's a really good junior class in the state, as Kyle Neddenriep said before I came on, and Indiana needs to get their share of those guys. And he did. I mean, they've only gotten one commitment in the last 2 years. Liam McNeely, high school player. I mean, they got last year Mbako on the rebound, but in terms of straight recruiting push over the last 2 years, they've gotten one guy, and that is Liam McNeely. They need to go out and get some guards.
And
I'm going to
I
keep
don't know
saying
that people understand how big NIL is playing in those
Oh, yeah.
roles of landing.
they've got the
coaches
NIL
and
money.
guys.
I don't think anyone's saying Indiana doesn't have the NIL to compete. They do.
Oh, no. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying it's not the recruiting so much as the NIL that has landed those big fish, but they're not getting the other fish that goes along that you have to have. Indiana has everything, the resources, the facilities, the NIL, the fan base. They have
Exposure.
everything you could ever want. They're in a middle of a state that is nothing but basketball talent. And yet this program is just continues to languish. But it's about having the right guy, right person. It doesn't matter if you're running a business. If you don't have the right person running it, you're not going to succeed. There's no question about that.
Well, I'll tell you another guy who's gotten up and going quickly is Thad Mata at Butler. Or how long has that dude been there at Indiana State? 2 years or 3? I mean, they're going to make the tournament most likely.
They
right?
look good too. Yeah, they look good. They're a good team.
Yeah. So
They look very good.
year 3. He's in year 3.
Oh, okay. Same year as
Woody.
Mike Woodson is at
11
Indiana.
and 20, 23 and 13, 13 and 2. 4-0 in the Missouri Valley. I don't know.
Winning is winning, baby. So Indiana has a must-win. I never thought I'd say this. A must-win game at home against
the Gophers.
Minnesota.
Yeah.
But that's Indiana basketball has kind of become a cliche. And that's hard to imagine, but we're in such a different time in college athletics, but it actually should be easier for a program like Indiana to get back to what they were. But it has not been that has not been the case.
No, it hasn't. But yeah, they do need to beat Minnesota because then you got, like I said, Purdue at home and then at Wisconsin and at Illinois. Those are, I can't remember the last time they won at Wisconsin, and Illinois is really good. So good luck. Good luck.
Yeah, I don't know that would IU accept an NIT bid?
I don't know. I guess they would. Probably would. I really think that the NCAA, since they bought the tournament from the NIT, frowns on teams turning it down. But
well, there is that, and there's money to be made.
Yeah,
as opposed to not being made.
In a good world for Indiana, the women will be good enough to host the first 2 games in the NCAA tournament, and their arena won't be available.
This is something else I talked about last night.
You want to talk about a team that can shoot? They can shoot.
Is that
the women made 15 straight shots in that game the other day?
To 81%.
6 of them were threes. Scalia made 3 in a row, and Parrish made 3 in a row.
They're wicked good. A question about assistant coaches. I don't know that there's a team in Division I basketball that has more quote unquote assistant coaches than Indiana does.
Kentucky has more, but it's the same. We hear the same thing at Louisville. When a team doesn't win, I think people look at that kind of stuff and say, what are the assistant coaches doing? What input do they have? Are they helping or not? I don't know. I couldn't tell you who Matt Painter's assistant coaches even are and how much input they have. So I don't really put much stock in that.
Dang it. That's right. 5 Lips. You are correct. I was talking earlier about Romeo Langford, and I was thinking it was the daggone receiver from Purdue, David
David Bell.
David Bell. I
David
thought he
Bell
was
beat
on.
New Albany.
Oh, that's what it was at Seymour. I was under the basket for that shot. Yeah,
Yeah, when he
Rondale Moore was on that
senior.
team. Thank you, Five Lefts.
Rondale
Yeah.
Moore and Sean East, who played last night for Missouri at UK.
Yeah, we were talking about Sean East earlier. He's a kid that you got to just take your hat off to. He has grinded to get to where he is. I mean, he has traveled a long and weary mile.
Yes, he has. Yes,
What's
he
up next for you, my friend?
I'll be watching Louisville tonight. They're at Miami this weekend. Louisville's got NC State at home. I'll watch IU Friday night. The usual stuff. Yeah, Rondale Moore. Quite a stretch there for New Albany. They had Rondale Moore, Sean East, Romeo Langford. Then also in football, they had Stephen Heron, who went to Trinity and has been a good player for the Cardinals. So a lot of good athletes at New Albany High School.
Look forward to it, brother.
All right.
Have a great enjoy Publix the rest of the week.
Make your free throws.
Oh, yeah. Practice, man. Get that elbow underneath. Rick Bozich, appreciate you, sir. And I cannot tell you, everybody else, how much I appreciate you guys. Thank you for, especially today, for bearing with us. It's a little rough. And everybody's not going to agree with everything I say, but I also know that I don't know everything in the world. There's nobody that knows that more than I do. So trust me, don't think that I think otherwise. I do not. But just like you, I develop opinions, and I develop them off of what I watch, what I see, what I hear, what I read, as far as stats and this, that, the other thing. So just take it for what it's worth, but it's all about entertainment. Hope you guys had a great day, and looking forward to doing this again tomorrow. On the program, we will have Shannon Griffith joining us. We'll talk some Indiana football. Tyler Smith, Chris Denary. We'll see what else we can get going as well. Thank each and every one of you guys. I hope you go out and have a great Wednesday. And until tomorrow, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.